Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Nowadays, technology and design in the automotive industry are facing unique challenges. From creating experiences that emotionally involve the customers to being inclusive, the designers are thriving to cope up with the latest trends and technology. If yesterday the goal was to create desirable products in terms of aesthetics and performance, today is the matter of building an articulated universe of values that can fulfill the customer's needs and desires. So, how can designers create a lasting impact on the minds of users using design? To know more about this theme, in this episode, we interact with Pratap Bose, Vice President of Global Design at Tata Motors. With over 2 decades of global experience across various cultures, he has developed a unique understanding of diverse business cultures. And that's why, on our journey of discovering designeering, we talk to him about gearing automotive industry. Hello, Pratap, and welcome to Avantika Designeering podcast series. It's an honor and pleasure to host you on our show today.
Thank you, Rohit. What a pleasure to be here. I'm really glad we could do this.
So, Pratap, as our icebreaker question, for designers, the design is a part of their everyday life. These creative minds are always trying new techniques to level up their skills and experience by overcoming new challenges. My question to you is, how can designers come out of their comfort zone to embrace something completely different?
Yeah, very good question, actually, Rohit. This is something, of course, I have faced in my life as well through my journey as a designer, starting as a young junior designer, fresh from college, and to today in a sort of management role. It's very important that designers do step out of their comfort zone, not only in the creative side. That happens as a natural part of the process, but very important to understand where he or she fits in a larger scheme of things in a business. See, design is a business, and it's very important to understand that. And unfortunately, through our design education and even early parts of design practice, you don't actually realize how important that is. So I, for example, took many management courses. I've been lucky in the company that that allowed us to do that. I've taken many business management courses along the way, in finance, in marketing, in you know in strategy. So various parts of other parts of the business are as important to understand, because if you don't understand those levers, it makes it very hard for you to contribute to the growth and success of a company or your organization. So what I would say to designers, young and old, is actually start understanding the other parts of the business. HR, for example, how does that impact your final outcome? I mentioned finance. Who pays for design within a company? How does design actually earn its keep in a large organization? These are very important to know. So, and that got me out of my comfort zone, because I didn't you don't when you're doing a course on finance, or you're doing a course on marketing or on HR, you're really exposed, and it's very important to be in that situation. So I made sure, and my company and I made sure, that throughout my career I had exposure to other management and other business disciplines, and that has been very important for me.
Wow, that's an interesting advice and suggestion. In fact, Pratap, you have an experience of more than 2 decades. And from drawing cars in the textbooks to leading a team of 200 plus designers at Tata Motors, We would love to hear about your professional journey. How did this all happen? Did you plan it this way? Was it by chance? How did you carve out all of these things?
Yeah, that's a good question because some things you can plan and some things you can't. And let me just start. I think I always wanted to be a car designer, but in those days when I was studying at NID in the 90s, there was no specific car design course. So of course I did product design, as a specialization, but I chose automotive projects. NID was a open enough educational institute to not dictate what you did, so I chose many automotive projects, and to keep my interest alive in car design, and that's what I wanted to become. When I graduated, I got an offer to do a 6 month internship in an Italian company called Piaggio, and I was on a plane and I flew to a small town called Pontedera. Near Pisa, if all of you know, that's in Tuscany, near Pisa. And I started working there. And there you have to really dig deep because you don't understand the language, the culture, any of that. And there your skills as a designer, the language of drawing actually saves you, and that's something you rely on. Your design skills really see you through some of those hardest times where your language is falling short. Drawing becomes your language, and it was supposed to be a 6 month internship. I landed up spending 2.5 years there. It was a brilliant place to actually practice design. As you all know, Italy is one of those sort of meccas of design. So I was very fortunate to do well there. I still wanted to, of course, study car design, which, as you know, like I mentioned, I didn't get a formal chance to do. And that pointed me towards the Royal College of Art. I applied there, I got a scholarship, and I moved from Italy to London. Again, a great place to just be in. RCA is the only fully post-grad design college in the world. So everyone who came there already had some experience in the professional world. So your interactions with your classmates and the faculty was at another level. And also they, like I said, it was a worldwide audience. So in your class you had people from 7 or 8 or 10 different nationalities, and that cultural understanding also is as important as the technical understanding. So from there I graduated, I moved to Japan. I got an offer to work in Mitsubishi in those days, so I took that up. Again, you get out of your comfort zone. Going back to your first question, actually, you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you don't know the culture, nothing. But again, you dig deep and you pull out the skills as a designer, and that sees you through. So I worked in Mitsubishi and then moved to Daimler Chrysler Japan, where I worked in the Mercedes Benz Advanced Studio that was in Yokohama. And then, quite by chance, I was visiting the Delhi Motor Show with my then boss at Mercedes, Olivier Boulet. And I ran into Mr. Ravikant, who was the managing director of Tata Motors. This is 2006. And this is where, you have to make some opportunities for yourself as well. So some come to you, but some you got to make. And I remember walking up to Mr. Kant. He was very gracious, to just speak to a young designer. And I said, I would like to, I've worked for 2 or 3 global companies. I would like to work in an Indian company. And that was a time, they were establishing a European design and technology facility. And, one thing led to another. I met Mr. Tata on the back of that first meeting with Mr. Kant. And then I moved to, from Japan all the way to Coventry, other side of the world. And yeah, I've been here since 2007. Seen and done a lot. And the message is basically, you have to create your own chances. Had I not walked up to Mr. Kant in 2006 in Delhi, had I not taken the opportunity to go to Italy, had I not really pushed hard to get into the Royal College, and then take that job in Japan. You can't let fear and apprehension drive your career. You have to really give yourself the chance. And believe me, if your fundamentals are strong, as a designer or as any other profession, if your fundamentals are strong, you can always rely on that to build build for the future. And I had great experiences in all of these 3 or 4 countries, companies, places, worked with so many types of people, Germans in Japan, Japanese in Germany, the other way around. At Tata Motors, we have designers from 13 different countries. So this cultural understanding, the understanding of the business, creating some chances, making good on those opportunities. I think all of that has sort of helped me along the way, Rohit.
Wow, this is really interesting. Though I have one question here. Pratap, did
Yeah,
you
please.
finally learn how to speak Japanese?
Yes, yes. You again, you of course it's a very a business like simple form of Japanese. It's not technical Japanese, but it was enough to sort of get me around Japan and connect with my Japanese colleagues. Of course, being a German company, the working language was English. Everyone had to know English to work at Daimler Chrysler Japan. But when you want to make personal and emotional and human connections, it's always important to learn the language. So yeah, I did learn Japanese by the time I sort of came out of it. Learning Italian was a lot easier because you can start reading from day one, because they use the same script.
Script.
Yeah, but Japanese is harder, so you can't actually read anything. So it was much more a phonetic approach to learning Japanese.
Super. So, for my audience, for our listeners, and Pratap as well, digressing here a little from the world of design, but
Mhm.
any striking one exciting thing, Pratap, that you learned about business culture in any one of these countries or organizations, also, or economies, to put it in a broader aspect, that all our young professional listeners should try to imbibe early in their careers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing, when you do join any company in any country, you have to understand, you have to first have an understanding for culture and a respect for that culture. Why things happen in the way they do in certain companies and certain countries. And like I said, it's a very interesting mashup that I had, working with Italians in Italy, and then Germans in Japan, and of course Japanese. And then in this company, like I said, we are 13 different nationalities. We have suppliers which are global, who I visit in China, in Korea, in rest of Europe. So it's very important to understand culture, why it exists, why it is like that, and then respect that. I think the biggest problem people have is they don't respect a certain culture, be it a company or a country. And I think if you can appreciate and then respect that, and you can only respect it if you understand it, if you make the effort to understand it. See, no one will do it the other way around. A German will never tell you why he's German, or why he's the way he is, he or she, or and anyone. So the onus is on you when you come into a company or a country, to make that effort to understand what drives that culture. And I'll give you a simple example. I mean, like I said, I moved from Italy, where everything's so relaxed. We would have wine for lunch, even. It's just not even a question. And then you move straight to Japan, from that sort of situation. So one day I was in the modeling studio, where the cars are, clay models are built. So there's lots of machines, etc., milling machines, this and the other. And I had, for some reason, my hands were in my pocket. And all of a sudden, this guy, health and safety officer of the company, with a helmet and an armband and everything, runs in and gesticulates wildly, get your hands out of the pocket, because he knew I couldn't understand Japanese. And and I did that. I got my hands out of my pocket. And then he left, and I asked one of my colleagues that, what was that about? So he said, that's the safety culture we drive in this company. I said, what do you mean? He said, look, you're in a workshop environment where the models are being made. If you were to trip on something, you would not be able to get your hands out from your pocket fast enough to sort of break your fall, and that could cause an injury. So yeah, one way to look at it is, it's so bizarre and you laugh at it. But the other way is that, this may have happened before, and there's a reason why, the things are. And yeah, I never put my hands in my pocket again after that, in the workshop. And I still do that today. So it's just one of those interesting things. And there are hundreds like that. Of experiences and examples.
Hey, did you know Tata Motors is present today in more than 175 countries around the world? With more than 8.5 million vehicles of the Tata brand, the company is well known in the automobile markets worldwide. That's definitely a valuable suggestion, Pratap, and I've always believed in the power of culture. In fact, my next question, is related to that. So you've been associated with Tata Motors since 2011. You worked across three in-house design centers: Pune, Turin in Italy, and European Technical Center in the United Kingdom, leading
Hmm.
a team of more than 200 designers. The
Yeah.
question that I have is, how do you foster a symbiotic practice that turns a group of individual contributors into a team?
Yeah. I'll just correct you there. I've actually been in the company since 2007. 11 is when I sort of became head of design. But yeah, I was there, for 4 years before that as well, working in the UK studio. And first the first thing is, when we were creating these studios, I was really lucky to actually expand and create the studios. In fact, the UK one, we pretty much started from scratch. I chose people in the team, Rohit, which is very important. I chose people, a certain kind of people for the team. And by that I mean not the same, everyone being the same, having the same idea. No, it's a certain personality who is open, who's able to work with multiple challenges, who is self driven, who can work in a team. That's the kind of mindset I chose of people in my first line, at least. It wasn't only about the skill and the talent and where they had worked before. And I chose a lot based on personality. The entire first line, and they're all different personalities, by the way. They all have their own opinion on what should and should not be, our next product or project. But the common thing is that they respect each other, they respect others' work, they respect what the company is trying to do in the markets we operate, what is our corporate and group philosophy. These are very important. Again, goes back to culture. So I made sure that we had a cultural fit in my first line. And then of course they hired their own people. So you don't hire in your own image. That's very dangerous. You don't hire 180 Pratap Boses, or XYZ. You hire individuals with talent, of course. But when there's a choice between two or three people that you have to recruit, you always choose the one who has a personality which will work across, like you said, these three geographies. So the first thing was to make them all understand that it's not three studios and three teams. It's actually one team which happens to be in three different locations. That's very important. So we went from a three team structure to a one team in three locations. And that really helped because with the lockdown, we actually became 180 design studios. Each person's house became a studio. And as long as you make it very clear where each person's contribution is and how it counts and how it interlocks with someone else, I find it, it's a very, very powerful way of getting people to work together. Everyone respects each other. They know what skills and strengths they have, and that's how it all comes together. So currently, Rohit, it's not three studios. Like I said, it's 180 individual studios, and we're still delivering. We have to. Business doesn't stop. So
Well, this is so exciting, Pratap, that you'd want to book someday another time slot with you and only talk about these 180 people and your journey at Tata Motors, because there's so much to learn from this experience. But while we are at that, and in the interest of time, I would want to
sure.
jump into the world of design and
Yeah.
get your opinion on that. So, in
Sure.
one of your interviews, Pratap, you spoke about the birth of the Impact 3.0 design language.
Hmm.
The question that I have is, how different will be the Impact 3.0 from the Impact 2.0 design language? And what challenges do you face while shaping up the new Impact 3.0?
Yeah, great question. So I'll to understand 3.0, actually you have to understand 1.0. I always say mind share leads to market share. I can't say that enough. It's a very important thing that people don't really focus on. And what is mind share? Mind share is nothing but being in the top two or three consideration set of any business that you're in. So you could be like, a design college, you could be a product, you could be a delivery service, you could be an airline, you could be a car maker. If you are not in the top three consideration set of people who are having a conversation at a dinner table or at a party or over a coffee, you have no chance of a market share, business success, because as I say, people don't consider you. And while I joined in 2007, 8, we had huge mind share because of the Nano and other great products. Over time, we started sort of losing that steam, and we saw that we're losing customers, and this is because we had lost mind share. And that's when I sort of told the management that we need to get it back into people's minds, in their heads. And how do you do that? You do that through design, because people are consuming everything through a 5-inch mobile phone screen. So I said, if our cars don't look amazing on that screen in the first 20 seconds, you would have lost the customer. Because you can talk about the engine, you can talk about performance and space and god knows what else, but if they've already moved on, you have no story. And by the way, no one will bother even coming to the showroom. So my first focus was therefore getting this impact on a small screen, on digital media. So the cars had to look amazing. We worked very hard on the proportions, on the details, and that was Impact 1.0. So what does it mean? Create immediate impact on first sight, and then lasting impact over time. That means once you have bought the car, once you do go to the showroom and buy the car, over the life of the car, you fall in love with it. And that's lasting impact. So that's the core of impact design. So Impact 1.0, we had to shout a little louder because no one was hearing us. So the design language was a little dialed up. Impact 2.0, we actually toned it back down again because people knew about us, they were buying our products. And, we just enforced what Impact 1.0 did. And 3.0, the great thing about 3.0, it's all been created in these last 10 months of lockdown. And like I said, we are 180 different design studios now, because each designer's house is a studio. And we created Impact 3.0 in this sort of challenging period. And Impact 3.0 will be, again, we'll as we come out of this lockdown, the world is going to want to open up again, experience more, do more things. There's going to be a massive YOLO moment. You only live once. So a bit of hedonism, but with responsibility. So the Impact 3.0 design language will actually bring out that feeling that we are going to see coming, to customers. Little more flamboyance, little more flair. So it's a nice, strong, refined, appealing, clearer design language that will emerge from this lockdown through Impact 3.0.
Well, that's really interesting. And I think it's going to give a chance to more exciting innovations and designs in due course of time. In
Yeah.
fact, Pratap, building a product from scratch is a very complex process with many threads. And as you quote, from sheet of paper to sheet of steel, as far as Tata Motors is concerned, we would love
Mhm.
to know your roadmap for developing a product that optimizes the production process. And if you could just give our listeners a glimpse and help them visualize how does this really happen.
Yeah, so this is a good question. Again, finally, whatever products we design in a studio have to be manufactured and sold and created. We don't sell a pretty picture, right? We sell a physical product that someone has to touch, feel, drive, sit in. So there are lots of considerations, and the complexity. Of course, there's a technical complexity. A car is in itself, if you look at just the dashboard, the number of elements that you got to integrate in just a dashboard, headlights, tail lights, these are products in themselves. These are sort of specializations in themselves. They're so technically complex, from the legal, manufacturing, optics, all that point of view. If you look at just a headlamp today, it's a product design exercise in itself. So a car actually brings in together a lot of these diverse disciplines, and even if you look at materials in a car, there's, of course, there's sheet metal, but there's probably 20, 30 different types of plastics, that are made by different suppliers, and they all come together in the car. So the way you specify paint on a plastic bumper, and the way you specify paint on a sheet metal part is completely different, because the process of applying it is different. But still, when a bumper comes together on a car, it has to be the same color as the rest of the car. You remember those horrific days in the 90s where you would see this huge difference of color between a bumper and the rest of the car. So those are some of the complexities, and don't forget, all of this is also a very expensive process. A new car development can cost anywhere between 700 to 1100 crores. Just think of that again, 700 to 1100 crores. So you can imagine how much is riding on the design of a car, how many jobs are dependent on it. So that's a huge responsibility as well for a designer to shoulder. Because if it goes wrong, there's an opportunity for the consequence of that can be pretty alarming, like I said, in terms of people's livelihoods. So the car industry and the stakes are very high. So you have to operate, therefore, in this sort of complex environment: legislation, competition, the investment involved, and then the pure technical aspects of it. Like I said, so many materials and processes come together in a car. I don't think there's a single industrial process that is not in a car. You name it, it's there. So yeah, and goes back to my first question, therefore, that or the first question you asked. Therefore, the more you understand about every other discipline besides yours, of course, you have to be a great designer, no doubt. But being a good designer, in my view, is much beyond being able to draw on a piece of paper. It is about being able to take these diverse, in many cases, opposing forces that go into car development, and then try and find the right balance to put into a car. There are lots of discussions that we have on a daily basis as a company, as you can imagine, because of these opposing forces. I want the wheels to be bigger, but then someone from the chassis department says, but oh, that'll compromise on the turning circle or the ride quality. So how do you find that balance is very, very important as a designer. You cannot just have a position and say, okay, it's my way or the highway. You have to understand where to make the right trade-offs. And when you make the right trade-offs as a company, and you as a design team, that's when you come up with one of these great products. Any great product is a outcome of the right trade-offs that a company has taken internally. And this is very important. It's like a balanced meal. You can't have too much sugar, or you can't have too much salt, you can't have too much chili. It's always when the balance is right, is when you get the right taste or outcome.
Interesting. In fact, Pratap, this also brings me to a very interesting question, that from actually having art boards to sketch it manually to now digitally make a model of it on the backbone of a software. Do you think, this is hampering the freedom and creative process of young designers? What are your thoughts on, the virtual world compared to physically actually sketching a car model?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, the best software is the one between your ears. It's your mind, it's your brain. I always tell that. And in fact, the design process that we follow is also very traditional in some senses. I mean, the young designers still start with a ballpoint pen on paper, on napkins, on sketchbooks, or whatever it is. It's only the balance of when digital and other technologies come in. You need to understand when to bring that in. Today you cannot have a purely manual process or a purely digital process. You have to have a hybrid process that actually journeys between these two worlds, and you have to get that balance right. So why do I say you can't have a purely manual process? You can't, because there are so many more stakeholders today in creating a car. A supplier could be sitting in Korea or China or Coimbatore, and you got to get data to him. So the only way to do that is have a digital process. For example, other parts of the engineering teams, they need data so that they can start doing structural analysis, etc. But we also have, like I said, a very analog process. The Each car goes through a clay modeling phase, which is very, very lovingly sculpted by our clay sculptors, and then we laser scan that and it goes back into the digital world. So this digital physical balance, to get that right, is very, very important, and many companies don't get that right, actually. And because someone in the management may feel, oh, we should go all digital, what's the point of clay models? Or someone in the management says, no, we should only do clay models, forget all this technology and all that. So all this will come, but the core of it remains the creative mind of the designer, to be able to really see what doesn't exist. We are the only people in any company which can do that. A lot of people can project the future, they can write they can put a PowerPoint about that together, but if you have to visualize the future, only a designer can do that. To put it all into something that you can touch, feel, discuss, only the design team in a company can do that. Finance guys can make financial models, projections, etc., etc., but it's still not the object. Um, so like I said, the core is the software between your ears. It never lets you down. Your computer can crash, your license can expire, but always to be able to pick up a pen and draw ideas on a sheet of paper is core to what we do. But then, yes, understanding that balance. So again, digital allows you, for example, to try out multiple options. If you want to do a grill, if you want to do details for wheels, you can see them, visualize them very, very quickly. And we've started using software from the gaming world. It's called Blender and others for visualization, which are very light, easy to learn, free software. So most designers have, in this lockdown in Tata Motors, they've basically taught themselves how to use Blender. And it creates 3D models, which you can then render and we can share with our management. So yeah, it cuts down time, it cuts down a lot of iteration cost. But if you don't have the idea, the basic core idea, no software in the world saves you.
Hey, did you know Tata Motors amazed everyone at the 2020 Auto Expo by announcing the revival of the country's most famous model, the Tata Sierra EV concept. In the early 90s, the car was hailed as one of India's most efficient SUVs, focused on CES, connected, electric, shared, and safe. Well said. Absolutely well said. And while we are talking about, digital versus the physical world, one of the other exciting trends in the automotive design industry's future is the demand for EVs, or electric vehicles, which are increasing exponentially. However, one of my observation, Pratap, is that the design remains the same as a normal gasoline or a petrol car. The question is, why is this so, and what difference can we make, as far as designing EVs in a different way?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this Rohit, is purely because of the market economics. I mean, if I take the Indian, we sell, for example, we are a market leader in India now on EVs. We have the Nexon EV. Incredibly, we sold 3,000 Nexon EVs in a year. But we sell close to 9 or 10,000 IC engines of the Nexon in 1 month. So 3,000 a year to 10,000 a month is a huge difference. So for some foreseeable time, I think in India at least, EVs will be based on their IC engine brother. Again, because of the investment and the economics involved. But this is not to say that there's not going to be a tipping point. I think that tipping point will come. where the EV will become the lead, and let's say the ICE engine car will follow. Now it's anyone's guess when that will happen. You are all seeing where fuel prices have gone. Maybe that accelerates it. Maybe there's something else. It's a combination of factors, of course. But we at Tata Motors, for example, are very bullish on EVs. Our Nexon has exceeded any expectation we had, and we can't make enough. But yes, the architecture, the basic architecture, is based on an electrified IC engine product. There's no doubt about that. But already, we and others have started to think of a dedicated architecture, maybe a dedicated platform, which really optimizes the use of batteries and all of that. And I think, Rohit, if I'm honest with you, it'll probably come sooner rather than later. That tipping point will come, and we all in the auto industry are looking at that. The second thing is that EVs today are still slightly more expensive. So a customer coming off an IC engine car is in a way, in inverted commas, taking slight risk, let's say, because it's still something which is quite novel and new in India. So if you also change the shape and the way it looks, you're asking the customer to probably take two jumps. One is of course the technology, which he anyway has to kind of absorb and understand. He's taking a slight risk there. And the second one is, if you change the shape radically, you're asking him to make yet another mental shift. So I think the first focus is get them onto EVs first. Let them understand and realize what the technology does. Yes, in a familiar shape, and then I think the next gen, once EVs are sort of mainstream and accepted, I'm sure the next generation of EVs will look very, very different.
Absolutely, and we are excited to actually, be a part of the entire boom. I think a much needed initiative, and glad that all of the major companies are getting into it. In the interest of time,
Yes.
Pratap, moving on to our next question. While we keep talking about EV, technology is hitting a common level, which which is that every company can supply the same technology as their competitors do. At the same time, the design is something that differentiates between these brands. How does your team at Tata Motors stay ahead of the competitors in doing that? Because I see that there would be a huge amount of pressure on the design team to actually create the differentiation out there.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Rohit. Technology is such a quick moving target. In fact, if you look at the development timeline of a new car, which is about 40 months, 40 to 48 months. In that time, four generations of iPhone would have come out by the time you design one car. So that just shows the speed of technology around you. So you got to be ahead of the curve, basically. And that's where I think, again, design plays a huge role. What are the future facing features or needs of a customer that we can't see today but will emerge in the lifetime of the development of the car? Like I said, 40 months is a long time in a consumer electronics world, for example, right? Because four or five generations of consumer electronics would have come out in that time by the time you do one car. So we have to build in future proofing in our design. We accommodate, for example, you could start a project, and the industry standard is, let's say, a 8-inch screen, but by the time you launch it, it's all of a sudden it's 12 inches. How do you accommodate that? So that's one side, which is the technology side. The second is, like you said, the brand side. What is your message to the customer? What is your voice? We say design language. Language is something, therefore, you communicate with. So what are our cars saying to our customers? Our cars are our spokespeople, spokespersons. Our cars are our brand ambassadors. I can sit and give a lecture, but finally it's the car which does the talking on the showroom floor or on the street. So we try very hard to put a message into our cars, and the message is simple, that Tata Motors makes makes it easy for you to access your dreams and access your ambitions. We get people sending me photographs and us pictures of their cars either at delivery or where they've gone with them. And believe me, Rohit, the Tiago has been to Khardungla, it has been to the desert of Rajasthan. The Harrier has driven across rivers in Goa. The Nexon EV has gone to, has done record breaking, distance runs, ended up in Leh Ladakh. The car, or the Tata Motors car, it gives you a means to access your dreams. That's all it's about. It's as simple as that. And that message is resonating with customers. We charge a very, very fair and honest price for our cars, but it gives you so much more. So it becomes more than a car. It becomes a member of your family, and that's what we've seen. Like I said, people have fallen in love, and they don't fall in love with a technology. They fall in love with an emotion. So that emotional quotient is something which I think will always trump a pure technology play, because technology will come today and be old tomorrow, but the emotion is something that's very hard for any other company to replace. So that's what we focus on. How does the car make you feel as a family, as an individual, when you're driving in the beautiful roads of Assam, or the Thar Desert, or Rajasthan, or Agra? How does it make you all feel? And that's something technology doesn't replace.
I can completely understand and relate to the entire visualization that you are trying to sketch on our listeners' mind, and that's supremely beautiful. So, Pratap, coming to our last question, at Avantika University, we've coined a term. In fact, it's our philosophy called designeering, which is the blended approach of design and engineering. Do you think both these fields actually merge, and does this philosophy make sense in terms of training the next generation of techies and designers?
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, it's for me it would be design, engineering, like I said, finance, marketing, HR. A complete designer is someone who understands the other ramifications of the business functions. But yes, designeering is a good place to start, because design and engineering are so intrinsically linked in our development process. We have sort of daily interaction with our engineering colleagues. They are the ones who have to actually convert our dream into reality. So you can imagine, we give them a clay model or some digital data, and they are the ones who have to ensure it's stampable or pressable or moldable, formable, affordable. So they are the ones who really do the heavy lifting. And I think, again, if you have empathy as a designer, and designers should empathy should be literally a part of a designer's character. If you can empathize where that engineer is coming from, then I see there's a way of reducing conflict. And the same has to be said of engineers. I think they also should understand where a designer's point of view comes from. And I think there's always, like I said, that trade-off, that happy medium. The conflict we see is when they don't know enough about what each person does. That's the issue we've had in the past as designers and engineers. So if Avantika has this sort of hybrid, blended, interlocked, whatever you want to call it, that approach is very, very important. And I think stepping into someone else's shoes is fundamental in, therefore, creating great partnerships. I can tell you myself, Rohit, on the 7 or 8 cars that I have worked on in the past 7-8 years, all the new cars, I've had the best outcome has been where the design team and the engineering team have had this common goal of delivering the best product for the customer. And it's not about taking positions. When a customer sees a product, it's got the Tata badge on it. That's it. So it can't look beautiful and then not work, or it works amazing and looks ugly. It's that one statement you make jointly as a company. And I think the more design and engineering appreciate and understand each other, the more this will happen. Again, an Apple iPhone or Apple products are prime example. Highest quality of design, engineering and manufacturing. And that's why you get a product which creates so much joy in a customer's hands. So yeah, very very good initiative, Rohit.
Interesting, Pratap. Thank you so much for validating this. And it was a pleasure speaking with you. I had so many more questions that we wanted to talk to you about, but unfortunately, in the interest of the entire timing of the show, we have to
So
cut short this conversation. But I'm sure that your LinkedIn followership and people trying to connect you after listening to the show is going to dramatically increase, because I'm sure
my god.
everyone has a lot of questions that they would want to talk to you about.
Okay, great. I hope I have the time to answer them, but I do try and answer as many questions. In fact, I get almost on a daily basis, engineers writing to me saying they want to become car designers, or the other way around, or parents writing to me about their kids. So I try and, of course, communicate as much as I can, because I think it's part of my job to do that in a way as a designer. So I'd be most happy to connect with as many people as I can.
Giving back to the community.
Yes,
Great.
yes.
Thank you so much, Pratap, for joining us on our show. Thank you so much for making time for this. It was a lovely hosting
Thank
you, and we look forward to staying connected with you. Thank you.
you. What a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.